I'm on mute. Let's try that again. Welcome to the ASV's Galactic Centre Star Party. Before we begin, I'd like to say that in the spirit of reconciliation, the Astronomical Society of Victoria acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people today. Tonight we bring you the first of 7 live streams for the weekend. I am going to be a very busy boy this weekend. Tonight we will be focusing on what telescope to buy with our resident telescope expert, Mr. Bill Stent, the telescope gent. Following Bill's talk, we'll try and take a look at the moon and a few planets through cloudy skies. So bear with us as we do our best to try and bring you some live stream images. We have people all over Victoria with their equipment focused on objects at the moment. So we're going to do our best. A little housekeeping before we begin. We have raffle tickets for the Ioptron tracking mount still available. Thank you to Sidereal Trading for that prize. It's due to be drawn tomorrow night, so there's less than 300 tickets out of the 1,000 left. So there's not many left, so grab them while you still can. And if you're enjoying tonight's stream on Facebook, you can donate stars. Doesn't matter how much or how few stars you donate, they're all welcome. And on YouTube now we have stickers. We're not sure how they work. It's new for us as well. So we'll work our way through that one. Stickers are like stars, they're donations. We appreciate every little bit that comes our way to help us bring you these streams. Now on to the important stuff though. I'd like to welcome Bill Stent, the telescope gent. Welcome, Bill.
G'day, Mark. Hello, everyone.
So Bill's going to tell us a little bit about telescopes, what we should buy and what we shouldn't buy. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think I've only got about 20 minutes, including questions. So if I'm rambling, just give me a note and say, we don't want to hear about that. So
I'll just mute you instead.
Yeah, that would be just as good. Let's see. I'm going to be talking about first scopes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about anything but the first scopes you're going to be buying. I might talk about it at the end though, depending on if you've got enough time. But I'm going to start off by talking about a little bit about telescopes in general and those 2 and possibly 3 numbers that are most important and how you can sort of understand what a telescope does. I'll talk about what I think a first scope is. Probably about then I'll talk about what you want to look at will kind of determine what telescope is best for you. Then I've got some tips about working with a new telescope and particularly working with kids. And then I'll finally come up with my choice for the best first scope. And maybe then I'll talk about a second scope. So remember, probably what's best for you depends on a range of factors. There's no one thing that chooses what telescope is the best for you. So it's it's a bit of it's more of a conversation rather than a decision. So okay, let's get into it. How to describe a telescope? Now, all telescopes have got a couple of numbers. You can generally read them on the side of the telescope, and those numbers are aperture and focal length are the 2 most common numbers, the most important numbers. Now, aperture is how big the hole is at the front of the telescope, and that means how much light gets in. So clearly, because you're working at night, you're trying to pick up really dim objects, you're going to need as much aperture as you can. Obviously, more aperture is more expensive, so big telescopes are not first telescopes. Focal length primarily talks about how much magnification the telescope is able to give you. Now, you can change the magnification by changing the eyepiece, but at its heart, the focal length of the telescope determines how much magnification it is. And so what I'm going to call final magnification, that includes the telescope's eyepiece. And the final magnification is that number, it's 50 times or whatever it is. And that is, if you need to know, the telescope focal length divided by the eyepiece focal length. And that ratio tells you how many times bigger the object you're looking at with your naked eye is going to look through the telescope. So if you, for an example, if you've got a 750 millimeter telescope and you've got a a 10 millimeter eyepiece, which is the little short one, you're going to be looking at 750 divided by 10, which is 75 times the magnification. You swap the eyepiece to a 25, and you're going to change that magnification to 750 divided by 25, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, 30 times, which means that the eyepiece with the higher magnification, the higher number on it, the higher focal length, is actually a lower power eyepiece. And that's another thing that a lot of people sometimes forget. If you want to look at really teeny weeny little objects, you need the eyepiece with the lowest focal length. The other thing is that binoculars are the sort of poor cousin for in the optics world, but certainly don't forget binoculars. They are, in some cases, particularly for things like what do they call them, comets, they are the best thing to look at the sky with. The other thing that that binoculars have is a different type of magnification. They've got a different pair of numbers. If you remember that, there's these two numbers, like 7 times 50. The first one is the magnification, and the second one is the aperture. So what you're probably looking for is, I'll get into binoculars later on. Okay, how are we going so far? I've got some pictures of.
Plenty of time. I've popped your pictures up for you, so you can start
yes.
running through
All I have to do is go look. I was just going to say, here is a pair of binoculars. That's not a pair of binoculars. Where's my pair of binoculars? Oh, there. That's your standard pair of binoculars, and that's the sort of thing that you'd be looking at. You'll be looking at buying as a first pair of binoculars. Remember, you want it small enough to be manageable, because you don't want that. That's just a little bit over the top. That's very definitely not your first binoculars. But yeah, something like that. So let's see. Can you go back to me? Actually, no. You can just leave that there. I'll just yabber away in the background.
I think the pictures are better looking than us, Bill.
Sadly, at our age, that is probably true. Okay. So now the most important thing, or at least the most common thing that people asking me is reflector or refractor. And it's the age-old question. It's like Sydney or Melbourne. Refractors look like that. As you can tell, it's a long, thin thing that you stand at the back. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you stand at the back, and there's the eyepiece, and the front of the telescope is up there. With a reflector, boink, let's see where in this place the eyepiece is behind there. You can't actually see it. Probably got another reflector there. Yeah, there's another reflector. There's the eyepiece, and the front of the telescope is there, and you stand on this side and you look in the side. That's a Newtonian reflector. However, as to whether or not reflector or refractor is the best one to buy, I reckon. Well, both of them are okay, and they're certainly very easily available. But refractors are much more maintenance free than reflectors. Reflectors, you have to collimate, you have to muck around with them. And collimation is the most important thing, and it's not difficult, but it's just another little thing you have to worry about. So yay, refractors, they're maintenance free. Reflectors, on the other hand, tend to give a bigger aperture for the price, because glass, you have to polish on both sides, and in most cases, telescopes have 2 and sometimes 3 lenses at the front. That means that you've got to polish 4 or sometimes 6 surfaces. With a telescope, with a reflector, you only have to polish 1, so they tend to be cheaper for the aperture. I'll get my mouse out of the way. Yeah. So yeah, reflectors are cheaper for the aperture. So yay, reflectors. Reflectors tend to come with equatorial mounts. When you go to a telescope shop, you tend to buy a telescope on a mount, and for reasons that I'm not entirely certain, most of the time if you buy a reflector, it comes on an equatorial mount. And equatorial mounts are a little bit hard to get your head around, so boo reflectors. So just on that score, 2 out of 3 for refractors, and that's about as detailed as I'm going to get for reflector versus refractor, because that's probably detail that you don't really need. How am I going?
You're good. You got time, and we can
All
see
right.
your cursor. So.
Oh, you can see the cursor. Oh, good. There you
yeah.
go. Okay. Now, what I want to talk about what a first telescope is. Now, typically, people who discover the skies, they have this sort of this journey, and it's very, very common. What happens is people go away on holiday in the country, and it just so happens that it's at the time of the new moon, and then they go to the toilet on a clear moonless night, and they just get absolutely blown away by what they see up. It's just incredible. And they, people from the city just don't see the Milky Way, and when they do, they go, "Oh my God, that's incredible." So you want more, and that is, I got to say, also the mantra of the astronomer and the mantra of the astrophotographer. I want more. So you want, in this case, you've got nothing, so you need something to help you enhance what you've just seen. So people come home and they browse the internet, and they can't really get a good idea of what it is you're buying. Because you think, oh, that thing there looks really, really good. It's something called a Dobsonian, and it's looks entirely easy to use. And then they stand as a tiny, tiny photograph. But yeah, once you see that, they go, oh my God, I didn't know it's that big. So that can be a problem. Then people come along and they go to Aldi or something like that, and they get a toy telescope. And now a toy telescope, I'm going to call, say, under $200. You get a little tiny, a weeny little first 60 millimeter refractor, or a 76 millimeter reflector, which is these are things which are great Christmas presents, and they work a treat. I mean, this is a Saxon 767 on the screen here, and I have actually taken a photograph of Saturn through one of those. It worked out all right. You can see the rings and stuff. It's and for kids who are just starting out, it's actually quite useful, but it really is a toy. You can't get very far with one of these things. I'd say a decent first scope is going to be something in the order of $500 to $1,000. Everyone's needs and budgets are different, but that's roughly what I'd say you're probably looking at. The next thing is it has to be simple. This is a very simple telescope. Let's see. That's not a simple telescope. That's also mine. But so yeah, if you end up with something which is too complicated for you, it's going to be a hobby killer. And people put those things away and they go, I don't like this astronomy thing. It's too hard. So that's a bit of a failure. They've got the wrong telescope. So if you're after good advice, go to a telescope shop. There are telescope shops still. It's not all on the internet. And you go and talk to somebody in a telescope shop, and they'll be able to actually physically stand you next to a telescope. You'll be able to see how big that knob is, or you see how difficult that equatorial mount is to set up, and you'll get some good advice. So you might end up talking to someone like me or from Gerald. There are lots of good people working in telescope shops around Melbourne and around Australia. So yeah, that's a great step. The thing about first telescope is to remember you can get awesome views with modest stuff. So something like, I don't know, where's a decent, yeah, something like that, or a Dob 10, something like that. That is really, really simple, and it'll give you a great view for your buck.
So, Bill, roughly what's an 8-inch
Yes.
or a 10-inch Dobsonian going to cost?
A 10-inch Dobsonian, which is that one there. That one's what we call a solid Dobsonian. It's some of them got split in the middle. I wouldn't be recommending the split in the middle ones unless you really do need to save the space. That one's $1,000. The 8-inch one is sort of closer to 700 and something or other. A 6 is like $500. So
family-wise, you'd be looking at starting at sort of like a 6 or an 8-inch for a family to purchase.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And get started.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that'd be a good start. Now, remember, Dobsonians have their disadvantages, and you know, like I was saying before, you've got to figure out which it is that is best for you. And remember, there's a lot of different factors. But yeah, you can't look. You can't go past a Dob. All right. Let's see. The next thing that you have to, when you're trying to choose what telescope to buy, you want to, if you want to, I always ask people what they want to look at, and people kind of look at me strangely, and they go, "The sky," and you say, "Yeah, that's true," but what you want to look at really does determine how you want to look at it. So, in general, people start out by just general gazing, just standing there with with their eyes just looking around and going, "Oh, that's amazing." And then people look at, well, the next thing that I look at is the moon, because the moon is obvious, it's big, and it's bright, and it's there, or at least it is there for some of the time. And then after that, people tend to look at the planets, and after that, people tend to get a bit specific, and they kind of go, "Oh, I don't know, galaxies, maybe." So I'm going to start with all of those and suggest what those targets mean for your scope. So if you're going to be noodling around the Milky Way with both eyes open, you would you're looking at big things. They're constellations, the moon, and the Milky Way, and these things are big and they're awesome. And the best thing you can use for looking at one of these things is a pair of binoculars. Now, binoculars are small, they're light, and they're very, very easy to set up and use. Basically, you just pull them out of their pouch and you stick them on your head. So, and you'll find that you use them all the time. And there's a bit of a saying that says, the telescope that's best for you is the one that you will use again, and or you'll use all the time. And binoculars you will definitely use all the time. And even, I mean, I've been doing this for a little while now, and even when I'm out at the LMDSS with my astrophotography rig, I always bring a pair of binoculars. The other thing you'll need with your binoculars is a banana lounge and some warm clothes, because what you do is you lie down in the banana lounge, get your blanket, or in my case a boiler suit, and you just immerse yourself. You put the binoculars up in your face, and you just look around, and you forget that you're on the Earth, and you start flying around. It's just awesome. Now with binoculars, you want low magnification. People often go, "Oh, I need magnification, I need magnification." No, you want low magnification for a pair of binoculars. And the reason is you're holding them on with your hands. I don't know if you can see me, I'm waving my arms around. You hold them in front of your face with your hands, and steadier views are better, particularly if you've got kids. If you've got kids, very, very steady views are totally important, and because the kid's going to want to hold the pair of binoculars themselves. So a 7 is about as good as you can get, I think. The other thing is you're going to need to worry about aperture. And aperture, like I said before, the more aperture that you can get, the better. Up to a point, of course. When you're talking about 100mm binoculars, they become really, really heavy and hard to lift. So there's a bit of a weight trade-off there. So a small first number and a large last number. And the perfect example is that one, the 7x50 pair of binoculars. You can get a 10x50 as well, which will give you a little bit more magnification, but you get a slightly wobblier picture. So my favorite is a 7x50, and those things are cheap as chips. You can get one for about $60. They're really, really very, very usable, and I don't want to say disposable because nothing's disposable, but they are, if your kid drops them, $60. Think of it that way. The other thing, or the next thing that people want to look at, are planets. Planets are favourites of some people. Some people never grow up, and some people are still looking at planets even when they're doing ASV streams. The thing about planets is they are teeny weeny little things, really, really small, but they're extremely bright. So now, if you think of let's see, if you're looking at say Saturn through a telescope, even a good telescope, it's going to be small. Even with a really expensive telescope, it's going to be small. it's only the only photographic people who can get that really big picture of Saturn or Jupiter. Typically, if you're looking at Saturn through a telescope, you're going to be thinking, imagine a pea held at arm's length. That's how small it's going to be. You'll still see the rings. You'll still see the bands on Jupiter. You'll still see moons on Jupiter, around Jupiter, and you'll be, particularly with Saturn, I don't know, it's a personal thing, I suppose, but particularly with Saturn, you'll be blown away every single time you see it, because Saturn particular is awesome.
What is it? As they say, Bill, if you like it, then you should put a ring on it. And that's what they did with Saturn.
That's very good.
I actually have a question. Someone's got a question for you.
Oh, have they? Have they?
Yes, we've got a couple, but one will come later down towards the end of your little talk.
Ask me your questions. I am not afraid.
So, Bianca is new to Melbourne, so due to lockdown, they can't go to any shops. Where can we get good advice on what telescope to purchase? Our 9-year-old who is obsessed with space. We are happy to pay $500 to $1,000, but have no idea what we should be buying. So, Bianca, if you can message the ASV's Facebook page, we can get some information to you on who you should speak to or the sort of people that you should speak to. But Bill can probably guide you on the type of telescope for a 9-year-old who is obsessed with space within that budget.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, for a 9-year-old, I would definitely say a smallish refractor telescope. I've got some tips about kids later on, so that might be very useful for you. Full disclosure, I am a Joey's leader in Scouts, so I'm kind of used to the 5 to 8-year-olds. But yes, kids like to stand at the back of the telescope for 2 reasons. First of all, it's a telescope, and that's what people think when they think telescope. And also, you can stand behind it. You kind of look over the telescope, and you really can see what you're looking at. So kids sort of identify that. If you give them a Newtonian and they're looking in the side, it's sort of a bit. It's not really confusing for them, but there's something weird about the spatiality aspect of it. So let's see. In that budget, look, I can't go past a 909, and I'll get to that later because that's actually my runner-up. So in my
there we go. There we go.
So
you're going to be showing Bianca, the scope to buy.
I will be giving you. Yeah, I will be giving you the numbers and stuff to buy.
Before you move on, Bill, just to answer Andrew's question, so that Andrew, this is being live streamed, but it will be retained on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page, so you will be able to come back and watch this as many times as you like. It's not going anywhere.
Fair enough.
Back to you, Bill.
All right, thanks. Thanks for that question, by the way, Bianca. Let's see now. Where was I? In fact, I was going to give a couple of examples of a good planetary telescope, and the number one is the 90/900 refractor, which is the one I was just talking about. It's sold as in a number of brands. It's either called a Skywatcher 90/900 or a Saxon 909. So the runner-up in this category is a 1250 Maxitov, which is it's a slightly different type of telescope. And that comes on different types of mounts. I think that the refractor is definitely the better one. Okay, now after people move on from planets, they tend to start looking for those deep dark secrets, and as we all do, these are nebulas and darks and deep space stuff. Nebulas are the total opposite of planets. Remember I said that planets are teeny weeny bright things? Well, a nebula is a dirty, great, big, dark thing. So the type of telescope that you're after is a very, very different. So rather than magnification, it's aperture that you're worried about. So you need to suck in as much light as you can for your dollars. A little while ago, I was up at the ASV's Dark Sky site, and if you can get up there, please do. I had 2 telescopes set up next to each other. One of them was a 1021 refractor, which is a long focal length. It's about 1,000 meter focal length refractor, and the other one was a 10-inch Dobsonian reflector. They're both about the same price. They're both about $1,000 to throw. we had them both pointing at the Orion Nebula, which is M42. You can see it in the mornings at the moment, and I got to say the difference was stupendous. The refractor, I could see the stars inside the nebula quite nicely, but the nebula itself was a bit of a blob. The 10-inch refractor, which got so much more aperture onto that thing, it sucked in so much more light. You could see the whole of the nebula. And the nebula M42, if you haven't seen it, it's sort of it's a bow shape. It's this incredible looking thing, and yeah, you could see the whole thing. It was just wonderful. So definitely a reflector is good for this. It's because it's got lots and lots of aperture. As I was saying before, the mounts can be a little complicated because they tend to be that equatorial mount, and you have to set up that pointing due south and raised it at 38 degrees or wherever you happen to be. So it can be complicated, but once it's going, it's great. But if you're looking for your first telescope, without a doubt, the best type of scope for a deep sky object is what they call a Dobsonian telescope. And I've come back to this again. Dobsonians give you the best bang for your buck in terms of aperture. They tend to have relatively long focal lengths as well, so they're actually pretty good for the planets, and they are great for the moon. So, however, don't expect to see much of galaxies. Even with a decent sized Dobsonian, a galaxy is a challenge because they're small and dim and hard to find. So now I've got, where's my picture of a Dobsonian? I had a Dob, that guy standing next to it. Let's see, where is he?
Man in 10-inch Dob.
Man and 10-inch Dob. There he is. He's a little tiny little bloke. He's actually standing next to a 10-inch Dob. He's not a dwarf. It's a big telescope.
It's a big telescope.
Yeah, a little bit of an anecdote. We had to do a collimation on a 12-inch Dobsonian, a 12-inch solid Dob, a little while ago, and we had to get it into a side room to do the work on it, and it hardly fit through the door. It's a big thing. So yes, Dobsonians are great. They do tend to be big though. Now, I think I'm running through, but I've got some tips for buyers and parents. My first tip that you probably shouldn't forget is more magnification isn't always good. Back to that 7 times magnification for the binoculars, and short focal lengths tend to give bright images, and they are easy to find, particularly if you've got lots and lots of magnification. It's very, very hard to find subjects. Finding Jupiter when you don't have a finder scope is just insane. Yeah. What else? Mounts. Think about mounts. Dobsonian mount is obviously a cardboard box. But with mounts, if it's a really, really good mount, you'll forget it's there. If it's bad, it's going to turn you off and you're going to kick over your scope. Make sure your scope isn't wobbly. If your scope is wobbly, if somebody's bought you a telescope or you've got a second-hand one, it's a bit of a wobbly mount, there are things you can do, particularly don't touch it. The other thing about mounts is if you can get one with slow motion controls, that's great. Slow motion controls are those bendy doobie things that hang off the side of the telescope, and you twist them and the telescope moves left and right nice and gently and slowly, and up and down nice and gently and slowly, because the Earth has a tendency to keep on spinning, and so what you're looking at is going to swim out and you want to follow it. And if you've got a manual telescope, following a planet can be a bit of a problem. So this nice slow motion is nice. Alt azimuth mounts, they're the ones that go left and right and up and down. They are nice and simple. Equatorial mounts are complicated and set up to set up, and it's also complicated to understand. And if you're trying to find a star which is close to the pole, they are nearly impossible to aim. So my recommendation for first telescope buyers would be to go for the alt azimuth. That's the left, right, up, down type, and leave the equatorial mount for your second telescope. Don't touch the telescope while you're looking at it. That's another tip. With kids, this is where the kids come in. if you're helping young astronomers, there are a couple of tips, particularly for you. Kids, in my humble opinion, of which I have none, kids, they tend to grab the telescope with their hands, and that, of course, moves it off. So you've spent 10 minutes finding Jupiter, and you've got it all nice and set up, and you go, oh, here, Jimmy, have a look at the telescope. And Jimmy or Sally jumps up and goes, grab the telescope. Well, I can't see it, no.
It is a problem we have at live events as well. But yeah, you're right.
Well,
don't touch the telescope.
Here's a tip. Yeah, here's a tip. You get a dining chair. That's the chair with a back. Make sure it's not a rotating chair. And you turn the chair back to front, and you get the kid to kneel on the chair and put their hands not on the telescope but on the back of the chair. That'll give them something to do with their hands, and then they can lean in without moving their hands. They can lean in and put their eye to the telescope. They never have to touch the telescope at all, and that's a tip that is actually very useful.
So, Bill, we have a very, very interesting question.
Yes.
Is that the official terminology, the bendy-doobie things?
Yes, that is the technical term. They're actually called slow motion controls.
I think we'll stick with bendy-doobie things. It sounds much better.
Yeah.
I do have a question. We do have a more relevant question, I think. Sarah wants to know. She's got well, bendy-doobie things, slow motion. I'd like bendy-doobie. We have a Nat Geo one we got from Aldi that we have never used. Would love an intro to telescope use live session. A little bit hard with telescopes to do an intro to use live session, isn't it, Bill? Because they're all so very different.
They are kind of different.
Is its
also,
own thing.
Yeah, you also it needs to be a hands-on thing, I'm afraid.
Yep, it's absolutely a hands-on thing. So what I'd recommend, Sarah, is if you're not a member of the ASV, become a member of the ASV, and when the world opens back up again, we have a lot of... It will be soon, yes. We do have a lot of these sessions where you can learn to use your telescope. You bring it along and we show you how to use it. That would be
I love showing people how to use their telescopes.
Yep. Continue on, Bill.
Okay. Another tip for kids with my Joeys, if you show them anything through a telescope, and you say, can you see it? Because the first thing you ask them is, can you see it? And they always, invariably, say yes, even if they can't, because kids are like that. They just want to please you. The thing is, if you have the telescope pointed at the moon, then the moon is quite bright and it puts out a little spot of light and it hits them on the cheek or around their eye. If you can see that moon spot hitting them right in the eye, then you know you can see that they can see it. So so just look at the side of their face and you can actually tell whether they're seeing the moon properly or not. What else? Oh, use a phone. Now, I happen to know that somebody around here, i.e. Mark, is a big fan of phones. And I got to say, these days with those phone holders and cameras on the phones, they're brilliant. You can get a phone holder which is holds it up against the eyepiece, and you can have on the screen of the phone what the telescope can see. And it's fantastic for the moon. It's really, really great because lots of people can see it all at once. And
it's very good for planets as well, Bill.
Yes, it is good for planets. It's a little bit. It takes a little bit more. Yes, it takes a little bit more practice. Yeah.
And when you get really good, you can use it for deep sky objects as well, can't you, Bill?
Well, if you don't have the brains to use a CMOS camera, then yes.
Ouch, that hurts. That hurts. No, I can use a CMOS camera. I choose not to. I like using cameras that match my hair.
So you're an Amish person then.
Now, we do have another question for you.
Got another question.
Wants to know, LD telescope, yes or no?
LD telescope, I would tend to put that in the toy telescope category. Typically, an LD telescope, if it's a reflector, it's probably a 76. If it's a refractor, it's probably about a 60. They are useful. They do work, but they're really only good for the moon. If the moon is all you want to see, or if it's a gift for somebody that you're gonna be using it for Christmas or something like that, they're great, but they are very, very limited in their capacity. Typically, they put a Hubble picture of some amazing nebula like M16 or something like that on the box, and then it's a bit of a problem for the poor retailer, because people come in and they say, why can't I see this on through this telescope? You say, well, it's not capable of it. So yeah, Aldi telescopes are I would say toys.
So the M16, so when you get one of those, that's when you take an M16 to it after you've tried to look at it.
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, it probably would actually improve a telescope.
Probably would.
Okay. I better push on. The other thing I want to say is give yourself time to learn the telescope, because particularly if you're showing kids, give yourself a night to use the telescope before you bring the kids in, because the kids are going to get bored very quickly, and you're not going to be able to give them the engagement that they kind of need to get them going.
Just not a night in lockdown Melbourne, because they're all cloudy. I heard someone refer to the cloud. They refer to it today as the clouds are also in lockdown at the moment.
They've been locked over us. Yeah, it's a bit of a problem. Yeah.
I am going to give you a hurry on, only because I can see some planets down below in my little screen here, which means we've got some clear sky. So we want to try and make the most of it. But
in that case, I can wrap up really quickly.
Yeah, when you've wrapped up, but hang around, because people are going to ask more questions throughout the stream.
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. What is my best first scope? You probably guessed it already. It's the 10-inch solid Dobsonian. It is $1,000, so it's not cheap, but it is great in all the categories apart from portability. They're not exactly portable. They are not too bad. If you really need to, you can put it in the car and drive it around. But on its own, it's a great telescope. It's the best for the best bang for your buck. The runner-up is the 909, the Saxon 909, and that's the one that you get on an AZ3. It's also known as a Skywatcher 90/900.
So this one it's also the 909 that's on the screen now?
No, I don't. Stupidly enough, I don't actually have a picture of a 909. So do I? Oh, yes, I do. There's a 909.
Ah, there we go. So there's a 909.
Yeah, so that's what it looks like. It's about a meter long if you include the hood. So it's not small. But it's not too difficult. It's certainly a lot more portable than a Dobsonian, and it splits into a couple of different
Now, what
areas.
Are they retail for?
That's about $400. So it's not too
bad. Not bad
and
at
you
all.
can see, and you can definitely see the rings of Saturn and stripes on Jupiter, and you see the 4 moons on Jupiter, and you will see Mars as a bright orange dot. You won't see much in the way of detail on Mars. You might be able to see Venus as a crescent if you're lucky, but this thing is also awesome for the moon, fantastic for the moon, and it's a great moon. It's a great daytime telescope as well. So it's a really good all-round first scope.
So what you're saying then is, if you've got a big car that can handle a Dobsonian, you get a Dobsonian, because you're going to be able to move it around.
Well, if you've got the lifestyle,
yes. You've got the life, yeah. If you don't have a big car, or you don't have much room when you're going away, then this is the scope for you, is what you're saying.
I think that's what I'm saying. Anything smaller is going to be a bit of a compromise. And yeah, look, this one is the one that you want. It's got a good mount and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, the 10-inch Dob is my favorite.
One more question for you, Bill, here. Tamara saying, my Saxon refractoscope says D90mm and F910. Is it a 909?
You are looking at that scope right now. That on my screen is that telescope.
Yep. Question answered. Wonderful.
And as you can tell, I like that scope.
Yes. Yep.
Any other questions? Because I can talk about anything. You can move on if you like, though. I relinquish the floor.
I think we're good to go. I think what we might do then. Here we go. One last one for you.
Yep.
What is a step up from the Saxon 909 besides the Dobsonian? Would that be the 130?
Well, the 130 is a reflector, and it's on an equatorial mount. So, so you do get a little bit more aperture, but it's a little bit more complicated. Probably the next one up from the 909 is, I'd say, the Maxitov. You can get a Maxitov on a manual telescope. Maxitov is a type of Cassegrain, so it's a little short guy. It's about that long. It's a bit fatter. They tend to be about the 127 is what, 5 inches wide. That's probably going to cost you something in the order of about $800. I'm not exactly sure. And that's got a lot more focal length, and it's got a little bit more aperture. So something like that would be the next step up.
So Bianca, I'd recommend speaking to guys at Saxon, Bintel, Sidereal Trading, Optic Central, any of those companies. Have a chat to them, let them know what you're trying to do, where your budget is, what your experience level is, and they will be more than adequately able to guide you in the right direction. All the people that work at all those different organizations know what they're talking about and produce and sell good equipment. I think so. We got is a Saxon 8-inch Dob okay, or go straight to a 10? I think an 8-inch is okay.
No, 8 is great. 8 is really good.
My son started with an 8-inch when he was 8-9 years old. He's still got it. He's got other telescopes, but he's still got that one, and it still gets used now.
The thing about the 8, the 10,
and dented, but it still works.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, the 6, 8, and 10 are all the same focal length, which means that they're actually the same length telescope tube. They're just different, so like fatness. So they're all built like that, so they can actually fit in your car. The 12 is bigger.
Yes. So an 8-inch is good. So I've got a wagon. So an 8-inch fits in a wagon across nicely, wrapped in towels, with the base. So 8-inch is a really good starting point, I think, if you're going to go a Dob. Otherwise, you go the one that Bill was talking about. They're both very good telescopes, and the guys at all of those different shops and businesses will be able to help you guys. But what we're going to do now, Bill, is we're going to bring the rest of the team in. We're going to bring Andy. Evening, Andy. We've got
hey, Andy.
Barry. We've got Lee with us tonight. We've got Andrew with his Andrew's outside. He's got his headlamp on, and Stuart, who is Deep Sky Section Director for Lunar and Planetary, and Michael, who's hiding up in Swan Hill, who's currently trying to image for us Pluto, which will be pretty cool. I think what we might do first up is Andy's got. I'll pop this up on the screen. Andy, do you want to tell us what we're looking at here?
Well, I'll get hype. Now that is Venus. It looks like a crescent, but it's not live. It's a loop, which I took when it was clearer. It's not clear now. This is from Wednesday, so it's just on a 1 minute loop, and there's a lot of movement, but it's just a view of Venus. It was a lot of air, turbulent air at that time, so that's why it's going in and out of focus a lot, but you can see it like a crescent, a bit like a moon looks like. But Venus hasn't got many features without a really big scope to see any features on Venus, and because it's always near the horizon, you don't really get to see unless on a perfect still night. There's so Venus is a bit of a dull subject to look at visually, as well as but there's a lot going on there. If you can actually get there. Yeah.
Now, I will ask Bill or Stuart or even Andrew or even Barry, whoever would like to jump in, tell us a little bit about Venus itself before we jump onto one of the other planets. Who'd like to speak up?
I've got a tip. If you are going to Venus, you need to hold your breath and take some pretty good sunscreen, because the atmosphere ain't good.
It's not, is it?
No. Venus, I reckon Venus is the most boring of the planets, because it's just all cloudy. So yeah. Look, it's the only thing that Venus does is go to a crescent, which is really, really cool. And it sort of demonstrates exactly where Venus is. It's what they call an inferior planet, which means it's closer to the sun than we are, and that's the reason why it goes to crescents. It's gibbous at the moment, which is a little bit, it's like a fat crescent, but yeah, if it's because it's inferior. It does do this crescent thing, and that's cool. The rest of it, nah, it's not my favourite. Somebody else say something nice about Venus.
Have you got something you'd like to add, Barry, about Venus? A little bit of information about Venus?
Yeah, Venus has got a very interesting atmosphere. On Earth, if we look into the distance, due to the refraction of the atmosphere, we actually see a little bit further than the horizon. The light coming from something is not exactly straight because of the refractive index of our atmosphere. On Venus, the refractive index of the atmosphere is so great that you can actually see right around the planet. Now, of course, you can't do that because the atmosphere is so thick and opaque. But if it was clear, standing on Venus, it would look like you were standing in the middle of a bowl, and the planet would actually fold up from under you. So that's called a super refracting atmosphere.
That is so cool. I've never heard that before.
I didn't know that. That's my one thing I've learned for today. Thank you, Barry. That was
of course. It's so opaque you wouldn't see. You wouldn't get very far, of course, but and it's so hot as well. But
the temperature
the theory about the atmosphere is that right at the top of the atmosphere it is quite cool, and somewhere between the very hot ground base and the top of the atmosphere, it is a temperature that we're used to. But whether anything is actually surviving in that area is probably not on, because it would need a lot of water.
Well, what it does it snows titanium on the peaks of Venus. So titanium settles as snow in, I don't know how many 100 degrees that is where it is, but the high peaks, you get little pockets of titanium snowing. That's another fact.
That's an interesting one. Stuart, do you have anything to add to Venus, or?
Well, it's completely covered in cloud, of course. Never ever is not covered in cloud. And if you ever want to see any detail, you need to use an ultraviolet filter. So it does seem to be a little bit uninteresting. It's very, very bright. It's the brightest star in the sky, although it's a planet. It's the brightest object in the sky next to the moon. But unless you use an ultraviolet filter, it's very hard to see any detail on it at all, because it's just covered in cloud, and it rains sulfuric acid.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to be there for that.
So some sort of umbrella would be in order.
One that's one that can handle some sulfuric acid.
No worries, I've got one made out of copper.
I was going to do that.
You'll end up with very green hair.
Now,
oh my God, that would be awful.
I must have rained on the back of my head then. I do have a question, actually, before we move to the planets quickly. Going back to one of those earlier questions, Jim wants to know, looking for a second scope, hoping for a starter, astrophotography, under $2,000, already has a DSLR. Any thoughts where he should start?
Yes,
I've got lots of thoughts. This is why I held this one back, because it wasn't sort of relevant to the new telescope for new astronomers type thing. This is more heading down the path of where what we're doing now with live imaging, I guess.
Yep. Okay. If you want to get into astrophotography, if you already got a DSLR and you got $2,000 to spend, I would spend most of it on the mount. I would get something like an HEQ5 mount, or one of the smaller Ioptron mounts, and you can get an ED80 refractor or something like that and put that on it. That may push your budget a fraction, but the mount is the most important thing. If you wanted to say get a telephoto lens, you could probably get some sort of sky guider, an Ioptron sky guider, or what's the sky watcher one called? Star Adventurer.
Sky guider, is that like the one we've got the raffle for?
Oh, it is too.
There we go. Oh,
in that case, Yeah, my advice is to win the raffle.
Win the raffle. There we go.
Yeah, because that's not an equatorial mount. It only guides in one direction, but that will guide a camera and a long telephoto lens, or maybe even a small telescope. But if you want to get serious about it, I would suggest starting with something like an HEQ5 mount, which is a proper guidable mount that you can upgrade to a proper auto guide system later on, and it will take a proper decent sized telescope as well. That'll get you definitely on the road, and you'll be able to take some lovely photographs with that.
So we got one more for you before we jump into a discussion about Jupiter.
Here's a man with true taste.
I have a Skyrover 115 APO. I'll
go.
just have to bow down to your judgment on that, Bill, because I don't know whether this is good taste or not. So I'm trusting your judgment.
It's an FPL 53 triplet.
Okay. Well, I don't even know what that means. So I'm not even going to pretend to understand what you just said. I can get great nebula shots, but it's rubbish for planets. I don't understand the science of why my scope can shoot items so far away yet struggles with Planetary.
Okay, full disclosure, I've got a Skyrover 107. It's just the Skyrover 115's little brother. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful telescope. It's a triplet. However, it's my focal length is only 560 millimeters. Yours is a little bit longer, about 700, which you're absolutely right is crap for. Sorry, am I allowed to say that? It's not very good.
Yep.
It's not very good for planets. When I take a photograph of Saturn with my planet, with my telescope, I get a dot. Remember what I was saying before about how what you wanted to look at determines to a great extent what sort of telescope you want. You at some stage may have asked yourself, do I want to look at a planet or do I want to look at a nebula? You've chosen the telescope which is the best for nebulas. If you wanted to spend that much money on a telescope which is specifically suited for planets, you probably should have got yourself a Schmidt-Cassegrain of some sort.
I've got one of them.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And
you can actually add a Barlow to for great improvement.
Well, you can. A Skyrover 115's got an F ratio of around about 6, I think, from memory. So a Barlow will. You could actually put a triple Barlow on it and get to a roughly the same focal ratio as a Cassegrain. So actually, no.
There's an option for him. A three times Barlow is what you're saying.
Yeah, Barlow the hell out of it, and you might be able to get. Yeah, and you might be able to get a decent planet, but
don't go too big on the Barlow, because I tried it 5 times and it was just not very good at all.
Yeah, that's right. I tend to tell people that it's a little bit like the question: what's a better car, a Land Cruiser or a Ferrari? The answer is they're both really, really good, but they're both highly specific to whatever you're trying to do them with. And the Skyrover 115 APO is a great telescope particularly for narrowband and that sort of photography.
What Hayden was sort of hinting at, though, is the science. So why is it that his equipment can't image planets?
It's all about focal length. Focal length is the primary determinant of magnification. And planets are teeny, weeny little things, and you need a long focal length. You've got about 700. For a decent view of a planet, you need something like 900 plus. And if you want a bigger view, 2,000, 3,000, go your C14, which is like 3,500.
Well, I would say, if you can hear me, that I've got a 9.25 inch Schmidt-Cassegrain with a 2.5x power mate. I imaged about 5 meter focal length. So that's the kind of range that you want. And that's not really pushing it. That's fairly standard. That's generally speaking, you want to try and image, set your focal ratio to about 5 times the pixel size of your camera. So that's getting a bit technical there. But that's
is our question person visual or photographic?
Hayden's astro. So I've seen some of his work. He's an ASV member. He's posted some stuff. He does some pretty good stuff. So
okay, in that case, yes, a well balanced pixel size to focal ratio will give you a nice planetary picture.
Cool. Now, just a quick one. Good evening, Association for Astronomy, Macquarie University. Welcome to our stream. Can you send your clear skies down for us, please? That'd be nice.
Yes. Yeah, that's the only thing we will need from you just in a moment.
The only thing we want from Sydney is clear skies. We don't want anything else. You can have the rest. We'll just have the clear skies. But welcome to the stream. Now we've got Jupiter on screen. I'm going to jump to Stuart and Barry and Andrew. If you'd like to have a chat to us about Jupiter, about what we're looking at the moment. Who'd like to jump in? Let's see.
You can go, Andrew.
I think Barry's going to have a go. Go for it, Barry.
I was just going to introduce the subject. At public demonstrations, we always say when we look at Jupiter, we should look for three things. And the first is that it's not round. And on our own planet, we spin roughly once in 24 hours, but our own planet, being albeit solid, actually bulges at the equator by about 40 kilometres. It's 40 kilometres further through the equator than it is through the poles of our planet. Now, the planet Jupiter, of course, is a gaseous planet that's spinning in roughly 10 hours, and it bulges an enormous amount. And that's out of roundness or elliptical appearance is quite obvious at the telescope. The second thing we asked to look for are the so-called stripes or cloud belts across Jupiter. They are a different chemistry to the whiter zones, those being more ammonia ice crystal-based brighter areas. And the third thing we tell people to look for is the four satellites, if they're all there. And we talk about the fact that they rotate around Jupiter, and they were first seen by Galileo in 1610. And in that year, he wrote a document called the Starry Messenger. And he didn't hang around. He looked at the moons of Jupiter in January of 1610, and he finished writing the book in March of 1610. And to his severe disadvantage, he said some not very nice things about the Pope at the time, and he ended up in under house arrest for the rest of his life. So he wasn't a very popular astronomer in that time.
He was very wise, though, Barry, that he managed not to get executed. But
like some of the others did.
But managed to get into house arrest and invent some laws which went on to Isaac Newton inventing calculus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was a very clever guy. He made a colossal contribution. I don't think it was all based on what he said about the Pope, but it was a time when people simply believed that the Earth was at the centre of the universe, and if someone tried to contradict that, they weren't well received. But people looking at Jupiter, perhaps even for the first time at a public presentation, are quite interested in these historic notes, and they listen with great interest.
Now, Barry, did you talk about the work that you do when you image Jupiter?
Oh, in astronomy, I was going to talk about this a bit tomorrow in the instrument making section.
Oh, you can still talk about it tomorrow, but you can talk about it tonight as well.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that. My basic interest, as well as having a general look at astronomy and all the lovely nebulae and galaxies and things like that, my interest is in the study of the science of the solar system. I'm interested in the physics and the chemistry of the planets. And I have put together a couple of spectroscopes and a set of narrow passband filters that I look at Jupiter with, and it means I can, well, really the visual filter is a fairly wide band filter from 400 to 700 nanometers, but I have other filters about 440 nanometers wide in as a band pass filter, and I look at parts of the spectrum of Jupiter at that particular wavelength, and you can see all sorts of extraordinary changes. I've got a couple of things here. Can I try and share it?
Yeah, if you want to try and share it, that'd be great. If you're able to explain when you're talking about spectra and nanometers as well, just so that some of the viewers who are new to astronomy might not understand what you're talking about there. If you can explain to them what you mean by that.
Well, the unit nanometers, there's 1,000 nanometers in a micrometer, and there's 1,000 micrometers in 1 millimeter. So a nanometer is a very, very small dimension, and it's used to measure the wavelength of light.
Which is where the other common comes into it.
Yeah, the other common unit being used in the past is the Armstrong unit, but the Armstrong unit is not an SI unit. SI stands for System International, and the people tend to now use nanometers, as I do, and it's really a measure of the color of the light. Most people in the red end of the spectrum, at around about 700 nanometers, that's where people's eyes start to fail, to go further than that. And in the other direction, most people can't see anything below or shorter than 400 nanometers, because that goes into the ultraviolet region of the spectrum. So our eye is really a bandpass filter from 400 to 700 nanometers. Now, if I'm sharing this screen,
you have to go through the share button down the bottom.
Yep, and it hasn't come up.
It hasn't come up yet. I'll let you know when it gets there. While we're waiting for that, Stuart and Andrew, did you guys want to have a bit of a chat about Jupiter while we've still got it on our screens, while Barry's getting his screen shared?
Can I just say something that, sorry if I blocked you, Andrew, there, but Barry went to Geneva a few years ago, not that long ago, and presented his findings in the infrared band of Jupiter, and was extremely well received.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a conference called the EPSC, which is going to be starting this weekend for this year. It's called the European Planetary Science Congress. And I wasn't prepared to share anything tonight, so I'm going to...
Okay. You keep trying to work it out.
I'm happy to share them, but I wasn't ready to...
Well, maybe we can tomorrow if you want. Barry?
How does that go? Can you see
that? Here we go. We're getting there. There we go. We got it.
That shows
well done, Barry.
Looking at here.
That shows a set of pictures of Jupiter. The one on the extreme right, of course, is a white light or visual appearance of the planet. They're all taken about a few minutes apart. The length of the AVIs are all about, or perhaps 120 to 90 seconds. And if we start on the left, that shows a picture of the planet as it appears at 900 nanometers, what I would call well into the infrared region of the spectrum. We would never see that with our own eye. We can't see it. We can only see it because the computer can, or the camera can record wave data at that wavelength. Moving along, the next one's at 950 nanometers, and then 1,000 nanometers, or 1 micrometer. And that next to the coloured picture is what we call the methane picture. That's taken at a very narrow bandpass filter of only 8 nanometers, and it's a methane absorption filter, in that everywhere that's dark shows that there's a lot of methane on Jupiter. And the interesting thing that shows up at this stage is the poles are quite light, the North and South Pole. And if we go to the one at 950 nanometers, there's no lightness of the poles at all, but there is at 1,000 nanometers. So looking at these images, you can see all sorts of differences. The other thing about this is that there has been an outburst in Jupiter's equator, and it's been described as a methane bright outburst, and that's it there. Can you see my arrow?
Yes, you can. Yes.
That's a methane bright outburst. There's no sign of it whatsoever on the coloured picture. You can see it at 1,000 nanometers. You can't see it at 950 nanometers, but you can at 900 nanometers. So looking at Jupiter through a series of filters or with a spectroscope shows up an enormous amount of information that it's really an ongoing story from night to night to see what's going to happen next. And
so just quickly, Barry, I think Bill had a question about the little white dots that we can see on
that one.
Well,
that's the one.
If you look at the coloured picture, it's actually a little red dot, and it's thought that material coming up from great depths in Jupiter's atmosphere is redder than the other part, and that explains that why the great red spot is red, in that it's made of material that's coming up from a great depth. Well, that little red spot there is in fact the one that shows up on the other pictures, and again, it's easier to see it on some of them than others, and that's a lead to what the chemicals are. Because it's bright at the methane image, it means that there's no methane involved in that little spot, whatever the gases are that have been coming up from underneath, and so there's lots of information that you can glean from looking at the planet at different wavelengths.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that, Barry. For those watching along tonight, we have an instrument making session tomorrow afternoon that Barry's going to be a part of, and he'll be talking about some of the work that he's been doing tomorrow afternoon, so you'll be able to see more of that as well.
Tomorrow it'll mainly be about the telescope that I use.
It will be mainly be about the telescope, yes. Yeah.
But we'll still talk about that.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, Mark, when I joined the ASV in 1990, Barry Adcock had been Lunar and Planetary section director for some time up until then. And I think, how long was it, Barry? You were Lunar and Planetary section director for like 35 years plus?
Oh, it was 40 years, I'm afraid. Yeah, from about 1968 to 2008. Yeah, 40 years.
So it's a great pleasure that Barry is still in the Lunar and Planetary section sharing his images, and I'm very pleased that of that, and also that Andrew is one of the newer members and with his 9.25 inch Schmidt Cassegrain, and also doing great work.
I enjoy seeing the images come through an email from Barry. That's for sure. I'm lucky enough to be on that email chain for Lunar and Planetary section, and when I see some of those images come through, Barry, it's really interesting to see the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Now
we'll keep it going.
Please do. Now, we did have Saturn there for a second, but it looks like it's jumped behind clouds again. So I'll keep an eye on Andrew's screen, and the moment he gets Saturn back, I will jump straight across to it. We've got Jupiter here from Lee's screen at the moment. But there is a question I haven't had a chance to get to, and it's Tamara wants to know, can we see Neptune? If we can get the clouds to play ball, would we be able to image Neptune tonight, guys?
It's here somewhere.
I think we should be able to.
Yeah. So if we can get the cloud, and look, it is meant to slowly clear up. So, hang on. Look, let's jump across to this. There we go. We have Saturn. Is this live, Andrew?
Yes, it looks like it. Yes, this is live.
It looks like it.
So yeah, I'm trying to juggle screens at the moment. So I'm
trying. No, that's okay. So this is a live image of Saturn.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah, this is Beautiful image. It's as it gets darker, it's because it's jumping behind clouds, and Andrew's having to play with the gain and the exposure to try and
it's really
bring it up
difficult right now.
Yeah.
The clouds are just horrendous at the moment, so it's really difficult. I've got some I've recorded earlier. One I prepared earlier, but
shall we jump? Do you want to jump to the pre-recorded one while we wait for the clouds to try and play ball, and then maybe Barry and Stuart and Bill and yourself can have a chat about Saturn for the viewers.
Saturn is amazing. Saturn is
isn't it?
Yeah, it's the most engaging of the planets. My wife's a teacher at Bourne High, and a while ago we had a Cassegrain set up on one of their open nights, and so many people have never seen Saturn through a telescope before, and we had this big long line of people waiting to see it. This happens at ASV events as well. A big long line of people, and the kids all come up and they go. Fair enough. And walk away, and they're all cool, And then the parents come along and they go, oh wow, that's incredible! I've never seen anything like that before. It's like blah 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 blah. It just makes their heads explode. And there's something visceral about seeing Saturn because you know what it's going to look like. Everyone's seen it. They know what they're gonna see, but seeing it with your own eyes is something very, very special.
So I have a pre-record on it now.
It's something that you never forget, Bill.
Yeah, it's just amazing, isn't it?
We're just waiting.
Actually,
pre-recorded screen
a lot of the comments when people see it for the first time think that you've stuck a sticker of Saturn on the end of your telescope and it's fake. I just do not believe that it looks like that.
Have you ever tried putting a sticker on the end of your telescope? You can't see it.
It doesn't work.
It would
if it wasn't magnified. If it was just glass,
it's called the dust cover.
The dust cover. How are we going, Andrew? Have you got your pre-recorded ready, or hang on? Andy's got I'm assuming this is a pre-recorded. This looks pre-recorded to me. While we wait for Andrew to get his going. So Barry and Stuart, while Andrew's getting his one up, did you guys want to have a chat about Saturn? Tell us a little bit about Saturn.
Oh, well, I'll give the others a go, but Saturn is smaller than Jupiter, but not by much. I think there's various figures that one can quote about mass and volume in the solar system, but Jupiter contains more mass than everything else I've put together, including all of the asteroids. But Saturn is only about 85-90% the size of Jupiter. It also spins very fast, so it when it's edge on, it is blatantly oblique as well, like just like Jupiter, and that will. I think its synodic period is about 28 years, and at the moment Saturn is heading northwards, and probably 5 or 6 years' time, the rings will in fact be edge on, and we'll see it just like we see Jupiter as an oblique disk. But I can't quote that figure. I should have looked it up, but it'll be in a few years' time. It will cross the ring plane of Saturn and see them as well, in a small telescope, the rings actually disappear altogether and we can't see them. In fact, for a short time, we actually look at the back of the rings due to movement of the Earth and Saturn. But so they will be invisible for perhaps a couple of months. And then they'll appear as just a very fine, bright line, and then it will get it will open up into the rings again. But unfortunately, it will be to the advantage of all the people in the northern hemisphere, because it will head off there, and it won't be back into the southern hemisphere for about 20 odd years, and that places me very close to the age of 100. So I haven't got a lot to look forward to.
What's the period, Barry, from seeing the extremity of the northern hemisphere then going through all the phases and then back to the northern hemisphere. Is it about
I
30
think
years?
Yeah, I think it's close to 30 years. Yep.
Yep.
So to go from wide open in the southern hemisphere to edge on would be about 7.5 years. And I reckon it's about 3 years into that already.
Okay, so in about 3.5 years, it'll be edge on, and then in 7
That's right.
years from that, it'll be,
Yep.
we'll see the whole ring again.
Mind you, we still see it, of course, but it will be low in the northern sky, and it will be at opposition during the summertime, which, although it might be clearer more often, it's also more turbulent more often as well in the summer. So
we'll see the southern pole next time around rather than the northern pole.
Yeah.
So we've been very lucky in the last few years to be able to see the North Pole hexagon, but we won't see that again for quite a while.
No.
Is there a hexagon around the southern pole?
That's a good question. Is there?
I don't know.
So the trouble is our own technology, particularly in the amateur world, has ticked on so fast that we can now see the hexagon in the northern hemisphere, but there may well be one in the southern hemisphere that we've never seen before. So that's something to look forward to.
So
there's always something new to look forward to with the planets, so long as you got a long enough focal length and the right Barlow.
So what you're saying, Barry, is that in about 7 years, when Saturn starts heading towards its southern hemisphere, we'll start seeing the other end of it and be able to work out if it does have a hexagon on the southern hemisphere.
It'll probably have to
wait about 7 years.
I think it'll be a bit longer than 7 years. The rings the pole needs to become quite visible rather than edge on. Yeah. So I reckon it'll be probably 10 years before we can tell whether there's a hexagon there.
So about 10 years. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'll still be pretty young by then. That's okay. Yeah. That's not too bad.
You'll be 8.
I'll be 8. No, I'll be a bit older than 8. 12. 12.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So there we go. Dave seeing Saturn with my own eyes proves that my Year 7 teacher wasn't lying.
Hello, Dave.
So Gary is saying he agrees with Bill. The first thing aside from the moon he ever saw was through his 102 Mac was Saturn, and then when he upgraded to his 8-inch classical CAS, it's just mind-blowing.
It absolutely is. Look at it. Yeah. Just look at it.
I love seeing Saturn through my 8-inch Schmidt CAS. It's beautiful. Saturn and Jupiter, just absolutely stunning. Andrew, have you got yours going yet? I did have it before, but I can just see a white screen at the moment. I saw it before and then it disappeared on us. So.
Sorry, I can't because it's in double screens.
Oh, okay.
I can only share one of those screens and it's sharing the wrong one. Let me try.
If you go through share and then select window, you should be able to select a specific window.
It won't because AutoStack it comes as 2 windows. I can't share one of them.
It's playing funny buggers on you.
I'm trying to share the entire screen.
Let's see what we got here. Well, no, we just see ourselves going into infinity.
Sorry, hang on.
My God, it's full of stars.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I got it now.
Someone was sharing AutoStack it. There it is.
Yep,
so this is a recording I took 2 or 3 days ago. So
do you want to tell us a little bit about Saturn and this image, this recording?
You can see the Cassini division really nicely there.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was pretty good seeing a couple of nights ago. So you can see the main planet obviously in the middle. At least 2 rings there. So the A ring and the B ring separated by the Cassini division, which you can see sometimes. As I said, this is a recording that I took. If I stop the play, where do I stop the play? There. So you can see the individual frames are quite blurry and quite noisy from the camera. But what the program does, it stacks. So I took 30,000 of these frames over 5 minutes, and it stacks them all together. And our eyes are kind of putting them all together, and it smooths out all that noise and that's a bit what Auto Stacker does. It stacks the best frames. It gets rid of a lot of that noise by stacking all on top of each other and finding an average result for that 5-minute video of 30,000 frames, and then it turns it into an image which you can then sharpen. And I've got a picture of the sharpened after it's been sharpened. I can show you what it looks like. If you can
wow, that's an amazing photograph of Saturn. Oh.
If you can see that, so this is the
That's brilliant,
final,
isn't it? That is amazing.
That is
the
awesome.
final
Look at that.
stacked, sharpened, and a little bit of color correction done.
The wonders of mathematics
on that video. So basically, what I've done is I've turned that into the image that you saw there.
That one. Now, Andrew, we have a question on that one. Damien wants to know, what program is that for stacking? So what did you use to do what you did? What is the program?
Okay. So the programs I used, so what I was using to capture the image was something called Fire Capture. And that's a fairly standard free Planetary capture software. So look it up, Fire Capture, written by I think he's German. I think it's
yes,
Torsten, I think.
Yes.
So I used it to record the images, and then I've taken it into another program called Auto Stacker. And again, I think he's German, or maybe he's Dutch.
No, he's from somewhere in Europe.
There we go, Emil.
Near the Netherlands.
Netherlands, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Auto Stacker, and you can, again, this is free. You can grab it off the web, and it does it. Basically stacks all those images, and then you get an average image. And I'll see if I can find what the average image looks like. No, I can't find it right now. But and then I use another program called Registacks, which is also a stacking program, but it came out before AutoStack. It came out, and I basically use Registacks to do wavelet sharpening. And it's quite powerful for that, and then take it into Photoshop to do the final edits to turn it into an image like you saw before. Now, what I've also got here is, if you're interested, one of Jupiter, which was taken on the same night. And again, let's see if I can play that image. So this is what Jupiter looked like that night.
That's a lot more stable than Saturn, isn't it? Yes.
I got some very good seeing at that time. And I think the best seeing is a bit further on. You can see here some of the cloud bands. There's the great red spot down there, just disappearing from view. But the main cloud bands, you can see quite clearly. There's still a little bit of not fantastic seeing, but you can see some white ovals. You might be able to see some white ovals along there. And again, after playing around with AutoStack, Registacks, and then finally Photoshop, I then turned that image into this one. And again, so you can see it's stacked the images. It's made brought up a lot of that detail. You can see there those 5 white ovals, 6 white ovals, as you could see before, the great red spot, and those almost looks like pimples on the surface.
I was going to say the white ones look like pimples.
But that's all from this video.
So when you're looking at that video, you can, now that you know that the white spots are there, you can actually see them on the video.
Yeah. So you might be able to see them there.
Very faint.
Yeah. Depending how good your internet is. But if
I can see them.
If you pause it, it's very hard to see.
We've got a question, but before we do, the same person who's asked the question has popped a lovely comment up. Definitely agree with the comments. Despite the stunning images we can take with modern telescopes and cameras, there is nothing like seeing Jupiter and Saturn through an eyepiece and a telescope, and I absolutely agree. I love.
Sorry, what's an eyepiece?
I own one.
Andrew, I love seeing the images you put together, and that all of the Lunar and Planetary guys put together of the objects of the moon and everything. But I agree. When you look through an eyepiece and see Jupiter and Saturn or Mars or even the moon through an eyepiece, it is really mind-blowing just to know that you're looking through a telescope and you're seeing that with your own eyes live. It's not as I guess jaw-dropping from an image quality point of view as the work that you do with your equipment, but it's still quite a stunning thing to see. Now, the question is, what telescope was used for those Saturn and Jupiter images? So what's your equipment that you're using?
Okay, well, I've got a Celestron Evolution 9.25-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope.
Is it an HD?
No, it's just a standard 9.25.
Well
you don't
done.
need the extra
not for Planetary.
wide for Planetary, because they're basically, you're just looking straight in the middle at it. So it's the standard 9.25, which I bought secondhand off the internet, the telescope site. I actually bought the Evolution secondhand off eBay. So I bought quite a lot of my stuff secondhand. A 2.5 times TeleView PowerMate, which again off eBay, I think, or maybe that was Gumtree, and a ZWO ASI 224 MC camera. So that's a standard Planetary camera that you can buy from online,
which is color.
It's a color. It's a one-shot color camera. You can buy mono cameras as well and put filter wheels on them. Becomes more difficult to do, but you can get slightly better results. But you really need some very good seeing, very high-end equipment to see the differences between a one-shot camera and a one-shot color camera and a mono camera these days, in my opinion.
Now,
Which
Andrew,
is wrong?
I've got a who said which is wrong?
Me.
Oh, we're not going to get into arguments over camera equipment.
I'm a mono fan.
We have some more questions for Andrew. Andrew's being bombarded with questions at the moment. So Anne-Marie wants to know, what size does your video file end up with all of those frames? So obviously this is a video recording. So what's your average video file size and length, I guess, is probably...
Well, there is no real average. It depends on the size of the planet. So Jupiter, I image Jupiter for 3 minutes usually, and I image Saturn for 5 minutes usually. The Jupiter images are normally around about the 5 to 6 gigabytes each, maybe 4, maybe a bit smaller, maybe 4 gigabytes per video file. Saturn tends to be a bit larger, 5 to 6 gigabytes. But if I'm looking at Saturn with the moons, and there's a very wide angle shot, I can get up to 15 to 20 gigabytes per video file, which can take some time to process. And when you do 5 or 10 of these videos a night, or 10 to 20 videos a night, you can fill up your hard drive quite quickly. And so most images have big terabyte hard drives that are sitting on the desktop nearby to just save all these video files.
So I've already gone through 5 terabytes just this year so far.
Yeah, I tend to go through a 4 terabyte a year.
Now, Andrew, and even Stuart, is there a reason why Saturn files are larger than Jupiter? Is there a specific reason, or is it just is what it is, or?
It depends on the size of the field of view that you're taking. So if you're taking a very small field of view, like this one, for instance, this one's quite small. Let's see if I can find it.
We get to see the guts of what you do.
My,
so for those playing along at home,
exciting.
Jup is Jupiter,
So let's see. That's This video file was only 2.7 gigs because it was quite small. I only captured the bit around the planet itself. But if I'm looking at a wider angle shot, for instance, with the moons involved, then I'm capturing a lot of black space, but a very, very large video file. So that could be up to 10 to 15 gigabytes. Depends on the size of the field of view that I'm capturing. If I'm just looking at the planet, it's obviously small. If I'm looking at the planet plus the moons, it's going to be larger.
Okay. Now, some more questions for you. I'm going to come back to Christine. Christina, I've seen your question. I will come back to it. I just want to get the equipment ones out of the way. So Dave wants to know, have you cropped, zoomed in on Jupiter and Saturn or used a Barlow? So the footage we're seeing now, is that cropped or is that Barlow?
It's both.
Both.
Yes. So on a full screen, see, this is only, this is actually, I've blown this up again. So I think, let's see, that's the actual size that I take. So the camera is only about 1200 pixels by 800 pixels or so, maybe 1300 by 900. So it's quite a small, 1 or 1.2 megapixels. But even then, I reduced the field of view to just show Saturn, and so it's only around about 200 pixels across, 300 pixels across. Well, let's see, it's 368 by 264 is the actual frame size. And I've also used a 2.5 times Barlow or PowerMate to increase my focal length to around about 5 meters. So I've done both.
Okay, now the next one. Gary wants to know, do you keep all the raw video after processing or delete them to save space? No pun intended. That's a dad joke if ever I heard a dad joke.
Dad joke.
No. That all goes on the 4 terabyte file.
So you've got all of your raw data from all of the years of imaging you've done.
Well, I've only been doing it for about 2 years, so there isn't that many terabyte drives yet.
Stuart,
not like Stuart.
Stuart, have you still got all of the raw data that you've recorded over all of the years, or do you delete it once a season?
I've got a shelf of external hard drives sitting behind me.
So that says to me that you keep it all.
Yeah.
Do you ever
I keep all of mine too. The hope is that one day there'll be some miraculous improvement in processing, and we'll be able to go back and have a look at them all.
Yeah,
which probably take another 10 years, but anyway, that's.
I have actually gone back through some of my old stuff and reprocessed it, but
so have I. And sometimes you want to do other things to it. Sometimes you want to try out a processing technique on some very good data. Sometimes the programs change, and you want to try as your processing skills improve. You want to try and improve some of the good data that you've collected.
And I don't know what the answer is to that question, really. I just keep it and don't think about it too hard and just keep buying external hard drives.
Yeah, they're cheap. $100 a pop.
They're cheap, $100 a pop. I suppose they last you a season when you think about it. So from a Planetary season point of view, if it's just one drive at $100, it's $100 a year that you're spending additionally. So we've got a question which I think, I reckon there's quite a few of you who can answer. So first in, best dressed. Christina wants to know, what is the axis tilt time span for Saturn? Saw it first at an observatory on tilt, I think in 2018. So what is the axis tilt span time for Saturn? Let's put Saturn up while we're talking about that.
As in the tilt of the rings?
I'd say so, yes. I think we were talking about it before. It's like 7 years, wasn't it?
I think that's what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
It takes about 30 years to go through an entire cycle. And
so an entire cycle is from Northern Hemisphere all the way back around to Northern Hemisphere of Saturn.
Yep.
There we go. Nice, easy one to answer in the end.
Which is
What was that, Lee?
I was going to say that's the year of Saturn anyway, which is 29.5 years. The equivalent time.
Now, Andrew, you have another question about your mount. What is the mount you're using? Comes with your Celestron, doesn't it?
Sorry, am I on?
You are, yes.
Okay, sorry. I just found Saturn again. It's come out of the cloud, so I might just share it.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. And then we're going to jump to Michael. Michael, who's hopefully he can share his screen with us at the moment. I can just see our stuff. But Michael has been in the background imaging Pluto. So we're going to jump to Pluto. We have been trying to get Neptune. Lee's been trying to get Neptune. He's still trying to get Neptune. Andy, I don't know if you might be able to get Neptune.
I think he'll be, even from that distance, he'll be looking through the same clouds I've got here.
Yeah,
it's all cloudy.
Too much cloud.
Yeah, I've got clouds.
Yeah. Damn evil clouds.
Here, sorry, all gone.
Oh, it disappeared on us. All right, Michael, can you share? Can you share your? At the moment, Michael's sitting in darkness. He's the only one we can't see. If I share your screen, Michael, we're just going to see ourselves. So you need to share the image that you're talking about. Otherwise, we're just going to end in the ether like this.
TARDIS.
We've been the TARDIS.
Okay, you can hear me, can you?
Yeah, we can hear you. We just need you to share like the screen that you want to share, not the screen that we're looking at now. Otherwise, it'll just
no worries. Yeah. Okay. How's that?
Hang on, let's have a look. Here we go. There we go. Now, tell us what you've been doing there.
How can I prove that that's Pluto though?
Yeah, how can you prove that dot that looks like a star? How can you prove that we're looking at Pluto? I need
if I can share. You do, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'll have to share something else. That's the only issue.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
we can just see you now. You're looking a little bit
bit dark.
Oh, it's
Imperial.
Bit imperial.
Sorry about that.
A little bit. That's all right.
Mark, when you're ready, back in.
There's Pluto.
There's Pluto. According to what though?
Yeah, I've got guide here. This is guide 9.
Yep.
So you got this this sort of square of relatively bright stars, and Pluto is in that position there, just to the lower right of a 15th mag star. Pluto is slightly brighter at mag 14.5, and it's about 5 billion kilometers away from us at this point.
So it's just next door.
So I'll bring it back to the image. Hopefully we can let's have a look here.
That's an image of us. Nobody wants to see us. They want to see Pluto.
That's right. How's that? You happy now?
Hang on. Let's share that again. Oh, where did it go? Oh, it's down the bottom there. There we go. There it is. So then we can see our reference stars and we can know that is Pluto.
Our 4 reference stars. Yep. And here she is.
Now, how did you...
It's not a lot.
I know it's not a lot, but how did you go about doing that? So you used that program
That's a single 30-second exposure. So I use a Celestron 11-inch Roackham and Schmidt astrograph. It's an f2.2, and I've got a QHY 163 mono camera on it, and it's just basically a 30-second exposure. So you can basically get down to magnitude 16, 17 on a 30-second exposure, pretty much. And I did get one of Neptune too, so that's Neptune and Triton.
Oh, there we go.
Well, it's not a lot.
Andrew's got a Neptune that we're going to jump to following this as well. So that's actually pretty cool when you think about it. Yeah.
Do you go back?
It's only a mono camera.
A couple of days and take a second shot.
Well, that's a visual thing, isn't it?
I've imaged it about an hour ago. I've tried doing the blink comparator in 1 hour, and it hasn't shown anything. So
right.
So
I took a
we'll have
photograph
to wait another couple of
of
hours at least
Uranus.
to see it.
Did you?
Yeah,
Did you use a mirror or did you use a telescope?
The 12-year-old boy in me said that I had to, but yeah, I took a photograph of Uranus, and I took it. I went back the following night, might have been 2 nights after, and yeah, it had moved. So you can.
Well, that's why I asked, did you use a mirror or a telescope? Because the 12-year-old wanted to know.
I used a telescope, Mark.
You used a telescope, okay.
Which has mirrors in it.
Which has mirrors.
No, my telescope does not have mirrors.
Oh, we are so childish, I know. Now, before you talk about that one, Mark, before you talk about that one, because I know you want to talk about that, we have a question. How much of a light year is Pluto from Earth?
Yeah, I know the answer to that. I think it's about 4 light hours.
4 light hours.
I think it's only 4 hours. Somewhere in that, Mark.
So if it's a billion, it's 1 point something billion. A light year is 300 something minutes per kilometers.
Now. So we're thinking about 4 light hours is what Michael is saying. Now, Michael, do you want to share that other one? We're going to jump to Andrew's Neptune next. But I know you want to show this.
Yeah.
So
basically just comments.
It's not lunar
sure, no worries.
But we'll let you get away with it.
Well, it's solar system. You've got to take on board the minor objects.
All right. We'll let you.
This one's interesting because it's this one's actually an asteroid. It's an asteroid.
Oh, it's the asteroid.
Yeah, 2020 PV6. But it's an asteroid that's turned comet.
Is this the one
because it's got a little bit of a tail on it.
You posted the other day? I saw you post something the other day on this.
No, actually, it's the first time I've imaged this one.
Oh, this is a different one.
Yes, one of many.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's not much to tell really. It's just basically a brand new asteroid that was discovered last year, but it suddenly developed some dust, and you can see a very reasonably faint dust tail. So that's one off. I've got.
Do you want to move your cursor?
Yes, it's approaching the sun.
So that people can see. So that's the asteroid, and you can see.
Yeah,
the dust
that's the head.
It.
That's the head. Yep, and you can see the dust that's coming up from behind it. Yeah.
There we go.
So it's pretty faint though. It's 14th magnitude. It's nothing special through a telescope. There are slightly brighter objects in the sky. This one's 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS. I saw this visually through my telescope the other day. But the good news for us Southerners is that next October, November, December, January, February, this will be a naked eye object for many months. Situated deep in our southern skies.
Oh, someone's reverberating. I'm not sure where, but we're getting double sound. But that's okay. That's pretty cool. So in how many 6 to 8 months, that's going to be something that we can visually see with.
Yeah, over a year. Yeah, December next year.
December next year. Okay.
Yep. That's it.
Hopefully we're out of lockdown.
And I've got another one. This is another relatively bright comet. Although that's when you say bright, it's only about 10th magnitude. Currently, it's probably the brightest object we've got at the moment in the evening sky.
Is that
no, they're all in the morning. There's a lot of bright objects in the morning. this one's in the evening.
This one's an evening one. Okay.
It's Comet Palomar. I'll just show you one other thing. I've just got to share this.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Go for it.
Reshare. Yep. Because this one's rather interesting. Sorry about that. Now I'll just show you. And you can see that.
Hang on.
At
Here
all.
we go.
That's now, do you recall what that may be? No guesses?
No.
Now, 2015, the Rosetta spacecraft.
Rosetta.
Spent a couple of years orbiting this comet, and it's actually landed on it. So unfortunately, I can't. It's meant to be an animation showing you rotate. But I took an image of this the other day. I'll just demonstrate to you what it looks like as a let's have a look at astrometric share.
It's all the detail.
Now, can we see that?
Image. And hang on, let me share that for you.
Yes.
Is it Churyumov Gerasimenko?
Oh, someone Googled
Churyumov Gerasimenko. That's the one. 67p.
7p.
There it is.
Now, I'm not sure what's happening, but we can't quite see it. It's just
right.
not appearing.
Okay. Damn.
Try again.
It's a shame. It's not showing. Doesn't like animations, does it?
No. Well, you might have to drop it into a Chrome tab, and then share it.
Chrome tab. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe you have to. I'll try again later.
Do that.
Yep.
Have a muck around with that. And while we're doing that, let's jump across to Andrew's Neptune image.
Oh, beautiful.
We have had some call for Neptune. So Andrew,
there's
take it away.
That's basically Neptune and its moon Triton. So I took this probably a few weeks ago. Let's see, the 26th of August. So we had a couple of we had a clear night then, and Neptune's only a few. It's quite relatively close to Jupiter in the sky at the moment. So Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune are forming a nice line at the moment. But yes, we're all clouded over at the moment, so we're not going to be able to really have a good look at it. But the blue of the planet is quite obvious, and I've brought up the planet, its moon, Triton, artificially. It was in the noise, and I've brightened it artificially in Photoshop, which is the kind of thing you can do as long as you let a lot of people know about what you're doing it. So I've done the same thing with Uranus, whatever you want to call it. And again, 4 of its brightest moons. Uranus is quite a bit less blue, if you like. It's much more of a pale blue color. But 4 of its moons.
I reckon it's more blue than Neptune. Neptune's sort of like a teal color.
No, Uranus is quite a bit brighter in its color. But the thing about it's what's difficult about it is you can make it whatever color you like, really. You can up the saturation. You can do all sorts of things in Photoshop these days. Generally speaking, it's more of a deeper blue than Uranus is. That's been backed up by the Voyager images.
Now, we have a technical question for you, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain the file name in terms of setting use? Because you've got a pretty fancy-looking file name there. I'm assuming that name has a lot to do with the settings that you have used for the image.
A little bit from the capture, and a little bit from the stacking. So obviously 2020 1107, that's the date. 1243 0.0 is the time in universal time, UT. It was an L. It's a luminance filter. It's obviously Uranus, and this is something to do with the stacking. So I've stacked the highest 50% of frames. L6, I don't know what quite that is. AP, I've used 1 alignment point for the planet on that one because Uranus is so small. I don't need many. I've used drizzle, so I've drizzled it by 3 times, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff about what sharpening I've used in Registacks, what gamma I've used, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that lets me know what I've done to that file. So if I want to do it ever again, I know that I've used a particular sharpening technique, and I've used how many alignment points. For instance, in Jupiter, I've derotated this one. I've stacked 10,000 frames. Again, I've used 10,000. Sorry, I lost it. 86 alignment points. I've used a particular type of sharpening tool. So that's basically how I'm using it to the file name. So there we've got Neptune and Triton, Uranus with I can't remember the name, Titania and
Oberon.
Oberon. I haven't been able to image Miranda yet, but the major 4 moons there. I've also taken an image of a comet from last year. I can't remember which one this was, but I only had a few. It's only available for a few days in Melbourne, and I managed to get.
If you have the date,
3
Michael will
frames.
tell you.
Hey, isn't that one I discovered?
I don't think
you've discovered.
That's Comet Swan.
Comet Swan.
Be,
yeah, I've got discovery credit for that one.
I know you have. It's not the only one though, is it, Michael? You've got a few, haven't you?
Yeah, nine in total. Nine Swan comets.
Just 9. That's it. Only 9.
Wow.
So this was quite large in the northern hemisphere at the time.
Actually, it bombed out. It's no, you're probably thinking of the other one, the Neowise.
Yeah,
2020 F3 Neowise. Yeah,
yeah.
I know that's Comet Swan because it shows that teardrop shaped head.
Okay.
And that's a big indication of a breakup and failure. So it was predicted to become naked eye visible for the northerners, but it ended up fizzing away, and just turning into dust. So they didn't see anything. We saw it all in the southern hemisphere before it went bad.
No. Well, this isn't that one then. This is something else because it was huge in the northern hemisphere. We only caught the last bits of it.
Yep.
I can't remember when it was. Anyway, and the last one, of course, is the International Space Station.
Yes.
So
I suppose it's in our solar system. It's lunar and it's planetary.
It's a solar system object. So this was something that I took. Let's see, in February this year.
How did you catch it?
Basically, I pointed my scope at the sky manually. I put it on the mount. I held onto it. I looked through the finder and tried to get the bright dot in the finder, turned the camera on, and just recorded for as long as I could. And
did you move the mount to follow it, or did you just?
Oh yeah, I moved the mount. Yes, I moved the mount manually.
Yep. So you manually moved the mount following the ISS as fast as it moves across the sky.
Yeah.
And
so
then
it had
about
4 or 5 minutes. I took about 50,000 frames, and I got it in the frame of these nice and sharp, about 6 frames, and then I sharpened it and put it online, and everyone thought you're a genius. So that's the trick with any type of photography. You take 10,000 shots, and you're bound to get 1 or 2 to come out right.
That's awesome.
You pulled a rabbit out of a hat.
Something like that.
Pulled an ISS out of his hat.
Hey,
Rocky.
There we go. All right, I think we are. I think we're about done. I don't think we can do much more tonight, unfortunately. So,
Mark, I've got an image of Saturn back in 2017 when the rings were completely open. If you wanted me to share that.
Yeah, if you could, as a closeout for tonight, that'd be wonderful. If you could do that, that'd be great.
Let's see if I can find it.
So which hard drive is this one on, Stuart?
Which hard drive? You can see in the background, Stuart. We can see Stuart's nose and his eyes, and just above his head,
just while
to the left-hand side.
While Stuart's trying to find that, I don't know if you wanted to flick to mine. Similar to what Andrew was saying, this was a satellite I saw at one point. This was actually through my guide scope, but as soon as I saw it while I was lining up, I basically grabbed the Xbox controllers that I have attached to the scope and started chasing it. And I managed to get to a point where I was just keeping right up with it, just perfect timing.
That's cool. I love it. Now we have a question. Harvinder wants to know: will we get to see any more live view of planets? Unfortunately, we won't tonight. There are too many clouds in the way, so we can't do much about that, unfortunately. So I do apologise. We've done as much live viewing as we can with the clouds. while Stuart, have you got yours ready, Stuart, or are you still searching for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to share your screen? Here we go. There we go. Look at that.
Wow.
Thank you, Tamara, for the stars. I heard the ding in my earpiece, so I know that's stars that were donated. Thank you very much to everyone who has donated stars tonight. They are all greatly appreciated.
So that's with the rings really wide open. It's not
yeah.
particularly well. You can see a lot of detail in the rings, and you can see the hexagon just. It's a bit noisy, but that was back in 2017.
So that's 4 years ago. That's what it looked like 4 years ago. Now it's almost
Yeah.
the other way.
Yep.
Yeah. Ah, wonderful. So
looking at the planets is very rewarding because they always change.
They do. They're constantly changing. Thank you, everyone. Well, thank you to the team for being here tonight and trying to live stream as much as we could. We got a fair bit live streamed, which is great. And thank you to everybody for being here to watch the stream tonight. As I said, this is the first of 7, so there are 6 more to go. The next one is tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. We have an astrophotography live stream. We'll have the new astrophotography section director, Tom Fowler, who will be showing us how to process an image of the Trifid Nebula. And it's one heck of an image. We did share it on our Facebook page. So you'll get to see it in all its beauty tomorrow. And you'll get to see Tom process that. Following that, we have, fingers crossed, solar section. So we've got a solar live stream. So we have a live stream of the sun. And I'm looking in the background here, and I can see Andrew's got a live image of Jupiter.
I had it.
There it is there. Oh, it's kind of...
it's gone.
It's gone. I went straight to it, and it's gone. Oh. Well, I'll continue to talk.
Sorry.
That's all right. Not your fault. It's the weather. It's the weather. Following the solar section, we've got instrument making. Barry will be back for that to talk. Stuart will be telling us all about his backyard observatory. And then tomorrow night, with some better weather by the looks of it, we've got someone up in Queensland who's got perfect clear skies, who's probably going to end up doing all the legwork. We'll have our deep sky section, and we'll be drawing the raffle. There are less than 300 tickets left now, so quite a few have gone during the stream tonight. So there's not many left. If you haven't got any, grab them. And then on Sunday, we've got more happening on Sunday. So once again, also thank you to everybody who has donated stars tonight. Much appreciated. Thank you everybody for coming along tonight and joining us in the live stream. And we will see you at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning for the... Well, I will see you with Tom at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning for the astrophotography live stream session.
And from my perspective as Lunar and Planetary section director, I'd like to thank everyone, you, Mark, Bill, Lee, Barry, Andy, Andrew, everyone. Great work tonight. Thank you very much.
We're always here to help promote the society, Stuart, and the sections that are within the society. So
excellent
you, everybody,
work. Thank
you. And we'll see you at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning.
It's a twisty doobie.
It's a twisty doobie.